I'm really happy to be sitting here with Nataliya Gumenyuk, who is a veteran journalist in Ukraine. We have a long history together because she came to Stanford as at that time, a Draper Hill's summer fellow. She's continued to do some really important reporting since the beginning of the full-scale war in Ukraine, and I think is one of the keenest observers of Ukrainian politics, Ukrainian society. So, Nataliya, welcome back to Stanford. Let's begin. You said that you've actually been to Kharkiv, so just so we understand, Kharkiv is really now one of the most important fronts in the war since the Russians have.
Yeah, and it's something, so first of all, great to be here back, but indeed, like I was less than a week in there. It's something very hard to comprehend for somebody who hasn't been there, because even me, living in Kiev, where in the capital where I permanently live, when I hear the news that there are bombs going on all the time, you really think like, oh, is this city standing? Because it's 20 miles close to the Russian border. It's so close. And there was this like new front open on the Ukrainian north. But at the same time, it's the second largest city in Ukraine. It has 1 million people, which is a lot for Ukraine. So you come and city is there. The shops are there, the shopping malls, the people are working. Yet, of course, it's very different from Kiev, because the air alert can be, warning people about the attacks all the time, 5 hours per day, say 7, 9. So to some extent, people can't afford to care about that and sit in the basement. So I would go, to the northern area, which was literally part of it was destroyed during the first months of the war, but it's rebuilding. And at the same time, in the center, there would be, like shells. There would be these guided bombs, the new ones. What also very important, why it's like that. It's just too close to the border. Ukraine cannot afford with that amount of the Patriot missiles to keep it in Kharkiv. It's a big debate. Can we defend that? But the concern is that it would be, defeated, or there should be more Patriots. I think that there are calls to that. So people are risking their life, and you hear that, a publishing house is destroyed at that moment, where still up till now, most of the Ukrainian books are published, and the school books are published, some of them, and it just has been shelled. And people, at the same time, the construction workers would still, work and do their job, cleaning the street, and you're a bit puzzled how it's all going on together. And at the same time, there would be, your friends would walk you around and tell things. At the same time, calling to their relatives like, are you in the basement? What is happening? Are you in the kitchen? Are you hiding? Are you alive? And it's kind of schizophrenic. And I think that some of them said like, that we, especially in that town, we getting used to these extremes, which shouldn't be justified for people. But for them, it's also the matter of dignity to stay, not to leave, not to give up. So they call themselves unbreakable. But at the same time, you talk to these people, you come there worried. You come there worried. You come, puzzled. And then you like inspired by their energy, how they're organized, how they're pursuing. But on the blink of the eye, you drive in the car with a volunteer who helped a lot of people that day, he starts crying, just remembering some person who he met a day before. Or another volunteer I met who was essential in saving, like 600 people in the basement during the first year of the invasion. He would tell all the stories, how he pursued, how he's a bit rebuilding his business, and how he's running a band and playing in the band for the soldiers, to all kind of the things. But then he would remember that like a day before, the people he knew, the whole platoon died, and he kind of cried whole night. So it's pretty extreme. So I think like this resilience shouldn't be taken for granted. People are really hurt, but for them, they understand what is at stake. So they are there. But again, I'm like maybe repeating myself. For me, it's like it's so important not to take for granted this resilience which is there. It costs a lot. People feel pain very strongly. They may be a bit angry, in particular, because what happened to Kharkiv is partially the reason of the delay with the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the energy system has been destroyed there was exactly when Ukraine went out.
How's that working right now? Have they restored power after that attack?
So to understand that, Ukrainian power system, power grid was attacked the whole night, the whole winter.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very worried that it would be the Russian strategy to destroy it. There were enough of shells to prevent it. So they destroyed the Kharkiv power grid in the end of March, more or less. Already in the very end of winter, when it became, better. And we don't know yet, because it happened already, like it was somehow too late for to be too cold, but it happened. It just like it maybe like a month earlier. It won't be. That makes it very painful. So people thinking like, would it be possible to restore till the next winter, till December and November? There are a lot of speculations. There are a lot of people saying no, it's impossible because it's just too costly. I don't really know. So now there are some blackouts. Things are working. But there are some limitations. But it depends on weather, and we won't feel it fully. But it doesn't understand that we need to relax.
I would say all of this really underlines the importance of Ukraine actually being able to attack targets in Russia, because you can see troops massing just across the border. The airplanes that are attacking, the power grid originate in Russia. If they could be pushed back, further, you would relieve a lot of that pressure.
Exactly, for these borderline towns, because again, like it's like 10 miles. What you would do? They're attacking from there, and so close to the border, you just can't, stop all these things. And also the Russian strategy, it's really cruel. If you really speak about these towns like Vovchansk, who are now in the news, so. We knew it because within the other project we're documenting the war crimes. So we knew that what is a Russian warfare? It's not really already to occupy towns. Everything which has happened since, since summer 2022, the way you occupy territory. You need to destroy it, to push people out, make the town not livable to the extent which is possible, and then you grab the territory, which creates the base to attack further. And now they can really do it fast. So, for instance, this town of Vovchansk, it's a small one, and there are there were a few dozens of people before the war, then they left. It was occupied for some 9 months and then liberated, but it was intact. And the assault started on the May 10th. What I heard I hadn't been there, but what I heard from the people who were there, on the May 20th, 10 days after, they said it was enough for them, to shut it down because of the also new drones, new ways of waging the war.
What other parts of Ukraine have you visited in the recent weeks?
I was traveling quite a lot abroad within the last months, but I try to stay intact and being in Dnipro, being obviously in the capital and in the west, but I'm also running the team of the journalists who are constantly and permanently traveling all around the country. So we're very worried about Kherson, about this southern town, which is it's really separated by the river from the Russian position, and they would do the story, which I find it extremely exciting, that a year ago there was the attack on the Kakhovka Dam, which caused a flood. People died. It really was a huge damage, caused a huge damage for the environment, for the economy. But what is also very strange, which a lot of people won't imagine, that of course there is some investigation ongoing, and we are following the case, and we're doing the film about that, of the local environmental service who going every single day under the bombs to that river, 2 miles, 3 miles away from the Russian position, to take the soil and the ground, just to measure the impact for future legal cases. And in that team of the investigators, for some of them, kids were under the occupation tortured. Some, has house destroyed, living in the basement. Their office is regularly shelled. Our team left a couple of days after it was shelled again. They just move into a different office. So it's just still strange to understand how the life is going on. But of course, these areas are not really livable. You know, it's really about the incapability to you know, like it's really dangerous. But a lot of people stay still. But it's very physical. I mean, for us, coming like from humanitarian background, you really understand, like, are the Russians 20 kilometers further? It's better because they have enough. They maybe have less weapon which can, you know, fly kilometers, but like hundreds of kilometers. But they have so much of Grads which can fly like 40 kilometers, like 20 miles. And that's mean that they can constantly shell. It's really about like pushing Russians within the physical distance, and like every five couple of miles matter for human life.
So what is it like being a journalist under wartime conditions? So the government consolidated all the TV channels and they're trying to exercise more control. We're in a very complicated position. First of all, it's important to understand that Ukraine has like hundreds and thousands of the media. And by the way, it's something shouldn't be again taken for granted, because within the one project I'm running, we support the local media. So we receive the, you know, request like for a couple of $1,000 to support the newsrooms. What for me is very important to understand, I was also myself surprised. Almost every single tiny town in Ukraine has something like kind of media publication. You know, like a tiny town has something. A lot of them were supported by foreign donors within the last years, but they exist. You know, like they have something. It's not like it's not a wiped out territory. But of course, people going a lot online. But we have the situation when there is this TV marathon, which is like a joint channel. One would imagine Fox News together with CNN at the same, you know, time, broadcasting 5 hours each. But under the I won't fully tell like government control. There is kind of a memorandum and the rules of engagement, but there are always a lot of the way journalistic investigation to understand what is a balance of power, how this channel, you know, is more giving time for members of the government rather than to the opposition. There would be always a debate. It's a war, you know, it's not really about the politics. You give a word to the governor because governor knows, you know, like it's not really about political battle on the law. Now the Ukrainian public broadcaster kind of was moved out from that marathon, but they kind of agreed that they can, you know, broadcast wherever they want. We have a number of the TV channels which, you know, are run by the opposition, but just people who like the opposition watch those channels. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, like you really need to be a really supporter of the former president to switch that TV channel. So it's really like they're preaching to a choir. So I think that there is a temptation from the state to control the media, mainly because they feel threatened, because the good old politics in Ukraine, which can be pretty kind of tough, chaotic, you know, very maybe sometimes impolite. It's all back. So I think they again would feel like that they're under the attack of some of the independent media publications. So they would try to keep the state, you know, state agency and some of the control, because the government party, you know, they never really own media. You know, like we used to have the system which we inherited when the big businessmen, oligarch, old school politicians owned their media groups. This party came without like nowhere, without other resources than like internet. So they hold into that, you know, like because it's just like they think like, oh, we are like surrounded by all those others. So it's not like a pretty perfect things, but what I think that there is a fight, there is a discussion, there are investigations, some are good, some are wrong, with some I disagree. With some I think that like they are too much of the politics instead of serving to the population. But I think it's the Ukrainian way. It's the Ukrainian way. So the old situation, I think one of the big drivers of corruption and problems in Ukrainian politics was the dominance of this handful of oligarchs, which each one of them owned a TV channel and could use it to keep themselves in power. But I mean, is it possible that that system will ever come back, or do you think it's just been permanently destroyed as a result of the war?
I think that there would be a huge change. In particularly, I don't want to make it too complicated for the audience with all the names, but I think that, like the richest people in the country, few of them have lost a lot, like really a lot. The whole industries, the whole region, the whole towns. Some of them, just especially because of their being, pro-Russian, or like playing this game, they are so out of the politics now that I don't see for them like Firtash, who is in Vienna under the extradition of the US. I don't see him really being able just to return to the politics, in Ukraine. So I think it's a really question of a different type of people who, I think it's too early to say. Would somebody of them like use the war for their enrichment or things like that? I don't see this type of figures. If you really speak about the, where we concern about the corruptions, of course, like the rebuilding. But I also would say that, where we have corruption still, mayor level, like real estate, residential building in the big cities, all this type of thing. So it's not like it's not there, but it's not, it's kind of on a different level, and there are different layers. The one city is better, the other is worse, so it's tricky, but again, I don't think it would be this type of the, just old guys returning.
Yeah. So maybe we can end on this following question. The Congress finally last month decided to vote for the aid package to Ukraine, military aid. What would you like Americans to know about, their responsibilities and role in this conflict going forward, and why should it matter to them?
We, being like speaking about geopolitics, of course, we think that in Ukraine that it's really tricky if we allow, the sovereignty of the country being broken by the bigger neighbor just because it's a big country. So I think it's a precedent. The whole war against Ukrainian invasion is a precedent. If Russia succeed, it gives a green light to China to deal with Taiwan and other countries, like all over. So I think like the general security is extremely important, because we can debate, especially in this country, what is like the global international security and order, but it's getting out of hand, and there is still a chance to put a genie into the bottle back, otherwise it's very chaotic. There is a human dimension of that. I'm working on the war crimes documentation. We're speaking about hundreds and thousands people who's been detained, tortured, abducted, and the people who died under the, Russian missiles. But what we learned as well, coming from human rights background, that with modern weapon you can save human lives. And then there is a question: if in the country where there is a political will, we can still discuss. Ukraine is a democratic country. It's, legitimately ask for help of the partners. And we clearly see the results that, every patriot system saves that amount of human lives. Why we don't do that? Why to keep this equipment in stocks? Why not to really support? Because for me then, we can speak a lot about like hypocrisy and something. All the things then stop matter, because I understand why people do not want to engage in a lot of like causes which are so impossible to win. Ukraine is something where there is a will, where there is a people, where is a society, where there is more or less an international agreement. Wherever speaking, it's such a moral clarity of this war, so it's not really something controversial. So if we cannot really do anything in these circumstances, what it's all about. But again, like being practical, we know, having that every single bullet helps. And yes, we started to speak about the, defense in term, and the weapon as something which, saves human lives.
Yeah.
So that support is really necessary. It's really appreciated. It's not taken for granted. It makes difference at any given moment.
Okay, Nataliya, that's a very good lesson, I think, for Americans. We've not experienced the kind of, military terror that your country has, and Americans need to remember that it's happening, and we can do something about it. So thanks for talking, and
Thank you.
have a good trip back to Ukraine. I hope to see you there in a couple of months, and
Thank you.
keep soldiering on.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thanks.